Good morning and happy Tuesday 10 at 10. I am your host, Richard Charpentier, and every week we go through questions that are being sent to Bakerpedia, and we'll have 10 minutes to answer your questions. So again, thank you very much for sending the questions, and let's get started. First question, dear team, if using hand washing method for wet gluten, how do you recommend that we calculate our gluten index for our wet gluten? Which part is considered the total wet gluten in our calculation for gluten index for wet gluten? Thank you. So first of all, thank you for sending the question, but I will send you to Bakerpedia. It's filled with wonderful resources where you can see all that information listed and how to do it. And yeah, for those not aware, you have the two methods. You have the hand washing or the manual hand washing, gluten washing method, and then you have the automated version with the glutamatic. And both have a specific way of doing it. So if you follow the process, it will give you a quantity of gluten after you wash it and put into water for a certain amount of time. That'll give you the amount, the protein quantity. If you do not know, if you're trying to figure out how much, you're growing your own wheat, how much gluten do I have? And the other one will do both. We'll do the quantity and also the quality and the strength of your protein. So both of them are good tools for you to do that. But to answer your question, go to the Bakerpedia page and search with gluten washing or hand washing of gluten, and then you'll find all the information you're looking for with all the details. But thank you for following us. Next question. Hi, Dr. Lin. What is your view on consuming almonds and nuts that are not labeled gluten-free? Can we wash and rinse non-gluten-free almonds and other nuts to eliminate gluten, or only purchase nuts in their shells? So not sure where you're based, but in the regulation in the US, any almonds are considered gluten-free. And so for anybody with either celiac or gluten intolerance, they're fine to eat. So, and it can be certified as gluten in the US. So not sure, technically almonds do not contain gluten. Not sure where your almonds might contain gluten or if they're cross-contaminated with other grains and the way they're processed. So that I do not know. And for something like that, I cannot, there is no way to certify or something you're buying. And so if you're unsure, any gluten-free should have a certification. So I will double check, but almonds are gluten-free nuts. So they do not contain gluten unless, again, you have another source that will contribute to gluten. Next question. What is an over fermented dough mainly due to? The fermentation process or the enzymatic process? So fermentation is also a method of generating enzyme. So flour contains enzymes, yeast contains enzyme, and as you're fermenting it, the enzymes will break down some of the long chain carbohydrates to bring sugar available for the yeast. Then in turn will start producing CO2 that will rise up your bread and lower your pH and produce alcohol, etc. So if you an over fermented dough is too high of a temperature, too much available sugar, too much yeast. There are plenty of principle that would be what is an over fermented dough. So in your case, it's both, and then even if you use a levain, which is a sourdough, natural sourdough, it does contain natural yeast in your process. The commercial yeast you buy is still yeast. So both of those are yeast at the base, the fungi. And it both contains enzyme. Your flour, again, as I said, contains enzyme. So it's generating both. So you might have a flour that has too much enzyme activity, which might not be good flour to bake. So go back to your local flour provider and ask whether or not you could get a falling number or an enzymatic sort of data to understand where it is, if they ran any analytical flour data to understand your quality. But it's both. So thank you. Good question. Next question. My flour is very weak. Which enzyme is best for bread issue? And how much can I use in 100 kilogram flour? Well, it's a great question. But in order to understand what need to be recommended, it's like going to the doctor. The doctor will say, what's your blood pressure? What's your heart rate? And do you have temperature? Well, I don't know what's wrong with your flour. That's the first thing to understand. What is your flour missing that you cannot make bread? Do you have too much starch damage? Was it poorly milled? Was it placed in were heated in a place where it was not kept in the right temperature? Is your flour too old? Is your flour too young? There are many issues that could make that. So in order to say, put this in and that much for 100, I cannot do that. But if you want to, please go contact Bakerpedia on a bakery resources and request a consulting meeting you can get 30 minutes and we can go through, and understand, okay, what's going on? What are the data? What do you see? Because from just a text message, I'm sorry, but I cannot really help you on this one. But keep on sending questions. I cannot get flour T55 for making croissant. What is the flour specification and how can I avoid the additives on local flour? Good question. A T55 is a way to basically categorize different flour on the French system. So the 55 will refer to the ash level. So it's how much is there. So 55 is a classic flour for breads. And on the 55, and how if you work with your miller, you can ask what other products they have. You can ask what other addition or dough conditioners they're adding to. And then you can check with them and say, hey, I do not want that. I want a flour that is just plain. They will have it. So you just need to ask and check with them. If they say they only have one style of flour, then look for another miller based on where you live. I'm sure that's not only one miller. So just go look for a flour that's suited for the type of products you're making. And it's all about understanding the protein quality and the protein quantity. There are two things right here: protein quality and protein quantity. And you can have a high protein and have a poor quality, and you can have a low protein with a high quality. So, and whatever works for you, for your product, is what I will keep on using. All right, now for the last question. I never used or even heard about cultured wheat or using enzyme when I undertook my French patisserie qualification. But we did use farine de gruau. Is that what cultured wheat is, or is there something else? No, farine, the appellation of gruau is G-R-U-A-U, gruau. So it's an appellation of French flour, and farine de gruau gruau flour is basically, as mentioned earlier, there's a T55, and then you have a T45, which is just croissant, meaning you have less ash. So it's usually preferred for, making patisserie, making other things. So it's not. Cultured wheat is completely different. That's not what it is, and you do not want to use cultured wheat to make croissant. That would be that would be good, and you wouldn't be able to, because it's acidified and it's cultured and to lower the pH and use as a way to extend your shelf life. But for you would just go back to a T55. But again, a flour is about finding a flour that works for you. and sometimes you can use one flour to make different things. I used to make croissants and breads. We had one flour. We made everything with one flour, so it's doable. But now we have the ability to have different styles and different, T55. You have the T80. You have the T150. You have different categories within the French flour. But it's the same thing in the US, but except we do not use those terminologies of T and to determine flour quality and flour, with the quantity of protein. Well, that's it, my friend. So we another Tuesday 10 at 10. Thank you very much for watching, and please keep on sending your questions. Have a great day and happy baking.